What I did yesterday is I had this project I had to do, and it had been put off, put off. My wife was ill, so I had to wait. And finally, yesterday came, and my mother would kick my butt. My mother would never let us work on Memorial Day because of my grandfather's service to our country. She would get so upset, but I actually had to work yesterday. I didn't tell her about it either. I wasn't going to mention anything to her, but she would get angry if my father tried to send us out on a job on Memorial Day. She would be very, very angry, and I really respected that. I thought that was a great thing. Yesterday, I was kind of in a bind, so I had to take my newly acquired Minneapolis Duck Blaster out and test it for the very first time. I was really excited about this. I was not excited about what I knew was going to happen while the testing procedure was going, but I was excited, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So I set up this Duck Blaster, and I'm learning all about this stuff. I'm watching videos by the Energy Conservatory. I'm reading all the instructions, most of the instructions. And I set this thing up, and I get all this duck saran wrap put out on all the ducks because you have to block everything off, and then you input into the return with this fan that just blows air through this piece of flex, basically, or flex helix, into the duct system and pressurizes it. And it'll know how much leakage there is based on what it takes to reach a certain pressure. And the pressure we're trying to reach is 25 pascals. And I've always heard people talk about pascals, very small pressure measurement, but this is my first experience in this area. So I was pretty excited about it. So the initial testing is, and keep in mind, I installed this duct system. The air handler is old, and I knew it was going to have to be, sealed up. We're going to tape the door shut on this air handler, but I didn't want to do it right away. I wanted to test everything first. I knew there was going to be areas that were problems. The floor boots, the air handler, and there's an unknown section of duct which I can't reach. That was the biggest problem, because if it leaked so much through that area, I was kind of screwed because I couldn't reach it. So, and someone's calling in on the phone. We're not actually taking phone calls right now, but thank you. I was in the middle of a really great story. Sorry, man. But you can call back. So I hooked this thing up, and I get to 25 pascals, and there's different rings. Let me back up for just a second. This duct blaster has different rings you use based on how much air is basically leaking. If a lot of air is leaking from this ductwork, you have to take the rings off so the most air can get into the fan, because you'll need all that static off of it and able to pressurize the duct up to 25 pascals. So I started off on the smallest ring, which is where you want to be. No, the smallest ring was just barely maxed out. So I put on the second ring. So I knew we were already a little screwed. I put on the second ring and turned the fan on, and it got up to 25 pascals, and we were leaking 128 CFM, which is about double what the acceptable amount would be. So I was like, well, crap. There's going to be a lot of opportunity to learn today. So I went down and I taped the air handler. And I'll tell you guys, I made a video of all this stuff, so you're going to see it on YouTube within the next few days, this whole process, because I thought it was a great learning process. And I could do without the crawl space stuff, but whatever. So I went down to the crawl space and I taped up the air handler. I taped up the drain connection. It's a Trane air handler, an old Trane air handler. So it has that recessed section where the line set goes through. I taped over that. I made it into like a flush thing. It's like a one flush piece right there of duct tape. I can't wait to be the service tech that comes back to this thing, by the way. It's going to be awesome. Almost forgot to hit my lights too. There we go. It's going to be one of those things where the service tech comes back and goes, what is this crap? Hey, it has to happen. Whatever. So I tape everything up. I go back upstairs. I even make it so I can make sure, because the drain, it's got the P-trap in it, so I made sure it was full of water so it wasn't blowing air through there. Went back upstairs and turned it on again. Got up to 25 pascals, 110 CFM, I think it was, 110 CFM. So 18 CFM down just from taping up the air handler. I said, well, that's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to be able to do something and then test and see the result directly. So I said, oh, that's cool. That's really nice. Yet, we're not there yet, which I started to get a little concerned, because now I had to depart from the air handler and wander through the duct system, which was condensing because of the dampness of this crawl space. Suck. Ultra suck. No good. It's the kind of thing, guys, where you're probably familiar with this, those of us who work in environments where there's a lot of crawl spaces throughout the South. Everything condenses on the bottom of it, and when you try to crawl underneath something, you accidentally rub up against it with your back, and your whole back gets soaked. That's what it was like. It was a pain in the butt. It's a pain in the butt. So I wandered around and I saw a couple areas on the ductwork that had to be taped. So I was like, all right, good. There's an actual area I could see where we could get a benefit. So I taped up those areas. I wandered around to the return. And I saw an area on the return, the existing, they had panned floors that went up. There's like little joists running next to each other, but there's a small opening in between them. So basically I had to fill those suckers and pack them in with insulation. I didn't have any spray foam or anything like that, and that would be an excellent thing to invest in. Get some spray foam. Gonna probably need that if I do this anywhere else in the future, which I plan to. I think it's a good idea to do it. So I fill that whole bay with insulation. I just pack it tight with insulation, and basically it's just pulling around those cracks in the floor joist because it's a pan floor joist, and they didn't seal up the edges where the boards hit the where they blocked in between the joists. So after that, I went back upstairs, fired it up again, got down to the right ring now, got the smallest ring on there, up to 25 pascals, and bam, 86 CFM. Went down another 20 plus CFM. I was like, well, that is pretty cool. That's neat. So I did these things down there, and I got that much CFM. And just think about that. If you have a 3-ton system running 1,200 CFM, 128 is over 10% of the entire air volume if you're getting the 400 CFM per ton, which a lot of times we're not. That's a significant loss. That's a big loss. And if it comes in on the return side, then we're drawing in humid crawl space air as well. It's going to be very detrimental to the system. And also, if you were to take splits from different areas around this, which I didn't get to do, because basically I was working on this thing till 9 p.m. I didn't get to do all the testing that I wanted to do. I wanted to do like this whole video, guys, where I did the capacity. We talked about it in the previous show. I wanted to do a lot of stuff to it, but like everything in life, there just wasn't enough time. There wasn't enough time, and it was just a bummer. But I hope, if not going back to this house, I do it on my house, or some of the customers, I still do their preventive maintenances and stuff like that. Maybe they'll let me tinker around and stuff, especially if I tell them, I'm just going to come over and bring some stuff. You don't have to pay me. We'll have lunch together, and I just want to do stuff and film it. That sounds probably pretty good to them, right? But since we are still at 86 CFM, and I had to make it to roughly upper 60s, around 70 CFM based on the square footage. It's like 4 CFM leakage per 100 square foot, I think is the rule. So I needed to get down in the 70 CFM range. So I was still a ways off. Said, what else can I do? And this was, a free thinking exercise because this is the first time I've done this. So I don't know what all to do. And there's people out there that do this all the time that I'm sure are like, well, make sure X, Y, and Z are done because these are common leak spots. So I went to the floor boots. The floor boots are not sealed. I have never really sealed floor boots before because I thought it was no big deal. So this would be a good opportunity to see whether or not the no big deal was the right thing to think. I went to each and every floor boot, and I actually had this mastic tape. Guys, I don't know what it's called other than mastic tape. It's the really sticky tape that's a pain in the butt. The kind of tape you used a Pookie Buster to take the screws out of that are underneath. I cut it in little strips and put it on the boot and taped it to the floor. It went all the way around the rim, created like a little flange right on the top of the floor there. Not far enough where it would show in the grills, but just far enough where I could get a good seal on it. And that took a while, actually. I went to each and every one of the boots, sealed each and every one of them up, and I was like, this is pretty much, it's dark outside now. It's getting dark. I don't think it was quite dark. It's getting dark outside. This hopefully will do it. It's been a long day. I thought it was really cool learning all about this stuff, but I was also like, this day's got to end too. It's 9 o'clock. It's been a long day. I had cut podcast videos, like the clips that you guys might or might not watch on YouTube that I put out every day. I had cut like 6 or 7 of them earlier that day, which took all morning. I had left at like 4 or 5 o'clock to go down to this house, and I'd been there till 9 o'clock. So I was done for today. I was ready for it to be a success and to go on home. And I had to go to McDonald's too, and their drive-thru it's painful. It's painful, man. It's painful. Why don't people want to work? I don't get it. So anyway, I digress. So went up there, fired it up again, got it to 25 pascals, and hallelujah, praise Jesus, it was at 67 CFM, so it had technically passed the test. Not a huge amount passed, but it had passed the test. So I was pleased. I was pleased because it passed the test, and I could say to my brother-in-law, hey, this has passed the test. We're good to go now. But I was also pleased because I was able to see firsthand the cause and effect of testing, repairing, and testing out. and I was really, really super stoked about it. I was so stoked about it that I texted Bill Spone. I was like, man, this is great. This is really fun to do. It's really cool to see. And at the time, I was like covered in dirt. I was soaking wet. I smelled. You know what? A lot of times when you're working, you don't really notice it, but I smelled so bad that it bothered me how bad I smelled. I mean, that's pretty bad. And I couldn't change my shirt because I forgot my extra shirt. I hate that. I hate it. But I just had an awesome time, and I felt like I learned so much about it. I'm glad I was able to film it, and I'm glad I'll be able to show you guys what I found, because I'm sure once a lot of you see this, especially you guys who might do this all the time, you might be like, hey, this is wrong. You might want to do this next time. You might want to do this over here, something like that. If you want to watch more videos just like this one, click on this playlist. And if you want to see a new video you might not have ever seen before, check out this one right down here. And if you want to find out more about the sponsors that make this show possible, you can click on this box right here. And of course, if you aren't subscribed, please click here to do so.